All right, so the Air 3S has been released. Now, I obviously have not been sent one. I did not get one, and I'm going to talk about why I probably wouldn't get one with what I have right now, and maybe just offer some recommendations if you're probably looking into that. But I think it's summed up best in this email that DJI actually sent out, because the big question is, okay, if you have an Air 3, do you upgrade to the Air 3S? Or if you have a drone from the mini series, do you move up to the Air 3S? And so I thought this reading this email would be interesting, just to kind of see the comparisons. And then just really briefly, I want to give you my anecdotal experience on what I've enjoyed about the Air 3 and if I'm considering upgrading to the Air 3S. So this email by DJI, they just kind of compare the Air 3S and the Air 3, sort of like my last video when I talked about the comparison between the Air 3 and the Mini 4. So there's really not a whole lot of differences that come in with this drone. Now, again, I do not have the Air 3S. I do have the Air 3, so this is just kind of going based off of what I know versus what they're telling us is in this new product. So the Air 3 and the Air 3S have slightly different cameras. They both still have the dual camera system, one with a 24mm and the other with 70. The Air 3S does have a 1-inch CMOS wide angle camera, while the Air 3 has a 1 to 1.3 inch CMOS wide angle camera. Now again, that's going to be the 24mm, and then both of them have the 3x medium telephoto camera lens. So that's the 70mm. So there is not really much of a difference in camera sizes, but they also both shoot in 4K. 4K 60 frames per second, and then now the Air 3S, they've actually bumped the slow motion video specs, 4K 120 FPS, while the Air 3 shoots in 4K 100 FPS. That right there is not going to really give me a whole lot of motivation to move up to that. It's just 20 extra frame rates per second. I don't even shoot in a whole lot of slow motion, but if that's your thing, then hey, maybe that's the thing that pushes you over. Now the Air 3S does shoot in 50 megapixels. That's the max megapixels. Now that's being stacked. The Air 3S is weighing in just a little heavier. It's coming in at 724 grams, while the Air 3 is 720. So not a lot of difference there. Flight time, they're advertising Air 3S as 45 minutes. Whereas the Air 3, 46 minutes. Again, not much difference there. I think one of the biggest things that's coming in that's going to be differentiating these two drones is the sensor. Especially the Air 3S has now a LiDAR system in front of it, a sensor, I guess, to also improve just nighttime visibility whenever it's actually moving through areas where you may be running into something. So the LiDAR is going to be mapping out the area a little bit more, so the obstacle avoidance is going to be a little better than the Air 3. Again, you're going to have to really consider if you have the Air 3, are you going into situations that you need a little bit more mapping capabilities to be able to avoid stuff like that. So that's something there to consider. But they both have omnidirectional obstacle sensing. So that's one thing that's not really setting them two apart. However, that LiDAR can possibly be used for other things in the future. I wonder if maybe there's going to be some features that will be you'll be able to take advantage of with that now in place. They're both also going to have the same transmission range. I've talked at length in other videos of how much I really enjoy how far I can take this. I did a video earlier this summer of how far I could go out from the seashore. I went pretty far out. I think it was a 12-mile round trip, so that was interesting. Again, I don't know who's going to be taking advantage of that, but but that's good to know. Now, one thing I do really appreciate about the Air 3S is the fact that it does come with 42 gigabytes of internal storage. So now if you run the risk of possibly losing something, maybe you're doing a mission where you have to fly out and you may lose your drone, you do have the capability of being able to record straight internally and keep that footage. On the Air 3, it does give you 8 gigabytes of built-in storage, but again, it's all depending on the risk factor, I think. Now, anecdotal experience. As I mentioned before, the distance, not that big of a difference. They're both going to be they're using the same transmission system, so you're not really going to have much of a difference there. I will say the air resistance on the Air 3 has been really great. There's been a lot of times where I fly, since I live up in the mountains, I do get a lot of wind. I get a lot of breezes coming in and a lot of gusts coming in over the mountains, and for smaller drones that can tend to affect the footage. Although the stabilization on these drones is awesome, you hardly notice that, and I do fly at rather high altitudes, and I've never really had an issue with any kind of jolting or shaking of the camera just because of the size of it. I've flown those same missions with smaller drones like the mini series, And although they do a really good job as well, you can tend to notice a little bit of a difference. Not the biggest deal breaker, but again, something to consider if you're moving from a smaller drone into this kind of size. Video quality on this thing, I've preached long and hard about this. Love the video quality, especially how whenever you move from the 24mm over to the 70, you don't lose a whole lot of quality. The sensor size are relatively the same. In fact, I do think, could be wrong, let me know in the comments, I think they do actually share the same sensor, both the 24 and the 70. So for landscapes, 70 is just an awesome feature. Dual camera systems, I really love this setup. The fact that DJI has been able to put 2 cameras into a drone like this so that you don't have to break the bank moving into the Mavic series and being able to and having to drop a lot of money that way in order to get that capability. This is a good middle of the way drone from somebody who's maybe moved up to something more advanced but not wanting to really go all the way into the Mavic series and spend so much more extra dollars. Now the controller and the battery hubs. These 2 drones, the Air 3 and the Air 3S, are going to be using the exact same one. So the RC2 controller, I love this controller. I love how intuitive it is. I love the built-in screen. It's definitely a step up from anybody who may be using the one that, I forget the name of it, where you attach the phone onto it and your phone becomes a screen. Just that added step of plugging in a phone into that and turning it on, making sure it's still powered. It's just, I'd rather avoid that. So if this is a reason you want to move up, definitely encourage you. Also, the Mini series, you know, you can buy drones with that, especially the Mini 4 Pro. And then the battery charging hub system, kind of the same thing. You're going to be getting the same kinds of smart intelligent batteries. One of the features that I have talked about at length on this is awesome. Is the fact that you can actually power transfer over into different batteries. So let's just say, like, if this one has 20%, this has 30%, this is 60%, it's going to actually shift the power over to this battery, or to this side, and fill it up. So that way, if you're in between batteries, you don't have access to be able to charge them, you can actually accumulate the power into 1 or 2 of the batteries so that you have full battery at one rather than 20 or 30%. It can fly maybe only a couple of minutes with each one. That is a great feature on the Air 3 that the Air 3S also has. Now, who would I recommend actually buying the Air 3S? A couple of people, a couple of different types of people. If you don't have a drone and you're considering jumping into the drone world, I'd probably recommend getting that, only because again, depending on where you're at, your situation, the wind resistance on this size of a drone is going to be perfect. To learn, it's going to be able to fight against the wind. You're not going to be worried about the size of it like if you would if you had a Mini 4 or Mini 3 or even a Mini 2. So the size is definitely going to help, and that bulkiness is going to give you a little bit more comfortability in flying in certain areas. The stability of this drone, the capabilities, is super simple, but you can also get very nuanced with the kind of things you can do with it. And then the next group of people will be obviously anybody upgrading from the Mini series. Now, all the features are going to be relatively the same. There's not going to be a huge learning curve, if any at all. If you're into drone flying and you've been using any one of the Mini series, you're going to feel right at home with this one. Again, the only reason you're really going to skip out on the Air 3 is just because of the added obstacle sensing features and that LiDAR sensor right up front. Other than that though, I would not recommend anybody who has an Air 3 to upgrade to this, because you're going to be paying a little bit more for a drone that pretty much has the same things, just a little bit more obstacle sensing, and then maybe, you know, better camera functionality in low light settings. From a personal standpoint, I don't really shoot a whole lot in low light scenarios. It's really more just morning and sunsets, and so there's enough light there for me to not have to upgrade for that added capability, and maybe just adjusting the ISO just a little bit gives me what I need. So that's just my personal experience. There could be other reasons. I'd be curious to know if anybody does have an Air 3, if they are planning on upgrading to the Air 3S, and what would be the reasoning. I think for me personally, I may end up just waiting for the Air 4 whenever that comes out, or the Mavic 4 if DJI ever decides to let us know when that's being released. You know, that'll be my next go-to. But if the Air 4 comes out and it's significantly better, with more added features before the Mavic 4, that'll probably be my go-to. But if the Mavic 4 comes out before the Air 3, before the Air 4, then that's going to be the obvious route. So I'm with the Air 3 and how similar it is to Air 3S, probably just going to be a waiting game for me. But if you don't have one, a drone at all, or if you're on the Mini series, that's probably going to be the best one that I recommend. So those are just my thoughts. If you guys want a more in-depth review. There are definitely some out there that are doing a lot of YouTubers out there that got their hands on this, and it's been the reviews have been fun to watch. One interesting one that I'd really recommend is Peter Lindgren. I'll include it in the description below, but he does some really interesting tests as far as with the obstacle sensing, and he's going to be doing some more comparisons with the Air 3 and the Air 3S to see what he comes up with. So that'll be a fun one. Keep your eye out for that one. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.